Don't react to narcissistic abuse. Over the last few days, I've had a bunch of people talk to me either directly, through email, and even in some of the comments on some of the videos, where they have talked about how they've reacted to the external influences of their narcissist. What I mean by this is they have been provoked or triggered, targeted, however you want to describe it. But bottom line, their ex or their narcissist in their life has been able to do something to trigger an emotional response. Maybe even you've had this problem in the last few days or few weeks. One of the things you have to remember and you have to remind yourself is everything that they do is to get a response. That can be getting angry, getting upset, maybe a little bit too emotional, maybe even a little bit crazy, maybe cause you to try to react or reach out to them to interact with them. The one thing that you have to remember when going through this is that, like I just said, everything they do is designed to get a response out of you. If they break a rule, or if they violate a court order, or if they do something to violate a protective order, or they just conveniently forget to remember what they're supposed to do, or they forget to bring something, or whatever it is, you have to remember they're doing that to try to get under your skin. That is they have to maintain that drama. They have to maintain that interaction. So any response that you provide is a victory to them. It may not feel like it. If you have them backed into a corner, or you think you have them backed into a corner, and you respond and you lash out to tell them that they're wrong, you can think that you're setting you're establishing your boundaries, that you're keeping them at bay, or that you're holding them accountable. And in some instances, you have to do that, but you can do the same thing without directly interacting with them most of the time. Let me give you this story. There have been times where my ex has had the kids. Primarily, it would be the 3-day weekends. I've talked about this. I've talked about weekends or the federal holidays before. Well, the first time I reread that and decided, okay, and I haven't had the kids for 3-day weekends for like the first 3 to 4 years. It's just in the last couple of years, or last year and a half, where I've actually had them for some of those holidays. So for instance, when I rolled into that 3-day weekend that happened to be mine, you can make the argument that the kids are supposed to transition on, from my particular court order, that the kids are supposed to transition on 6 o'clock on school days. Well, in thinking about it, all the other holidays listed in the court order were basically whoever had that holiday had the kids until school. During school, transition was at school. So the first time I had the kids on a 3-day weekend, I wasn't sure whether she was going to freak out and say that the kids should be with her on that Monday at 6 or not. And what I did is I prepared myself for either situation. I intended to have them until I took them to school on Tuesday, and I was absolutely prepared that if she made a stink about it, I wasn't going to fight it. And that's really the key on this, is preparing yourself to where you don't respond and you don't fight every little thing. Now, it's not easy to get to that point. It took me a long time. It took me a lot of pain, and it took me a lot of frustration to get to that point. In the past, if there was something that was supposed to happen, and I felt that I had a responsibility to try to hold her accountable. That goes right back up to what I was talking about before, is that every response is a victory and everything is designed to get a response. So when I finally realized that, and I came to terms with that and realized that I could help myself if I just didn't make things super important that weren't important. It doesn't mean that it still didn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it wasn't frustrating. But I was able to condition myself to where I always expected some type of shenanigans, and I wouldn't allow it to get to me. any response that you give them is a victory to them. Even if you catch, with the exception of catching them in court and holding them accountable to where they actually have a realistic punishment associated with it, if you're responding, you're giving them that supply. You're giving them a victory. So you have to prepare yourself for these situations. And what I mean by that is, if there is an opportunity for your ex to mess things up, you need to prepare yourself for it and accept it before it happens. We had a subscriber last year was really wanting their daughter to go to their wedding. She wasn't sure if he was going to bring her or let her go. And the advice I gave that person, and it falls in line with what I'm talking about right now, is prepare yourself for either situation. If you make it to where it's super important and they know that, more than likely they're not going to bring they're not going to make the situation easy. Or what they might do is they could let you stress for the entire time, finally come through at the last second, and then act like, well, what are you worried about? Of course I would do that. Why would I do? I would never do something like that, right? But you have to prepare yourself for it. Now, it's hard because if it's really important to you, to just let it go is really hard to do, but you have to. It's critical, because if you allow your ex to be able to control your emotions and control your situation just by actions that they do, they're going to continue to do it. Now, that's not to say that if you master all this, they're still not going to do silly things. They will. But if they absolutely see that they get a reaction, you can guarantee that they will laser-like focus to continue to do those things. When this stuff happens, all of us have bad days. All of us are going to be prone to respond in a negative way. You may even have had that happen yourself. I've had that happen myself. There are things that I've done where I haven't followed my own guidelines, because sometimes you get too tired. Sometimes you're too stressed. Sometimes you're just overly frustrated by everything that's going on, and you react emotionally and you make a mistake. Now, there can be a bunch of different consequences whenever you do that. If you're lucky, in my situation, when it happened to me, when I did it, and I messed up, I emotionally responded in a particular situation that, had she decided to use that against me, she could have used it. She could have used it against me. Now, sometimes these people are just looking for supply. Sometimes they're just looking for that reaction. So if you make a mistake, there's a couple of things that can happen. One is they could just be happy, so, quote unquote, because they were able to get under your skin. That's their victory. If they're more devious, they could use that as a battling point in court or in future court proceedings. Mine did do that whenever we went to court for the small claims stuff. She tried to bring up, it was actually kind of entertaining because it wasn't family court, but she brought up, well, he yelled at me at this time at the school. No bearing on this thing, but she still did try to bring it up. So you may have that same situation. If you make a mistake, you can recover. You can take a step back, realize you made a mistake, analyze what you did, what you allowed to get to you, look at it and say, okay, what can you do differently? What can you do to mitigate the mistake that you made, and what can you do to help yourself not do it again? That's really critical. You don't want to get yourself in a situation where you continue to make the same mistakes, or you don't want to get yourself in a situation to where you feel like you've made a mistake, so you're already sliding down the hill, so you might as well keep going. No, as soon as you realize that you've made a mistake and you've responded emotionally instead of rationally, stop. You can stop and try and start to recover from it. And don't sit there and beat yourself up for a long period of time thinking, oh, I know better, I shouldn't have done it. Like I said earlier, we all have bad days. We all make mistakes. We all do things that, we don't want to do. But that's just part of life, right? I mean, no matter what you do, and I have talked about this before, but no matter what you do, you practice for it, okay? And just because you practice doesn't mean you're going to knock it out of the park. If you do sports, then you absolutely know what, if you do anything that requires preparation, like I said, if you do sports, then you understand, right? You have to practice to get your endurance and your skill up. If you run, you have to practice for that. If you give speeches, you practice for that. You do things, to prepare yourself. And you learn from your mistakes and you go on. So if you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up and pick yourself back up and continue going. Now, I don't mean to belate that point or belabor that point, but I just wanted to drill that in because I know sometimes for me, when I would make mistakes in this, I would feel like, well, I'm already going down the pit of hell. I might as well just ride it all the way to the bottom. No, don't do that. Pause, take a break, and recover. Okay, so as we're entering this new week, hopefully you guys can take this jump off point, start this week fresh, keep yourself focused, keep your emotional state in check to respond rationally to your ex, and continue to make progress. All right, if you want to comment or add to the discussion about how you've been reacting to your ex and maybe how you've been able to hopefully get better on that and to approach it differently to where they don't have that level of control on you, and what you've been doing to help yourself that could help other people, add it in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, please subscribe. You can do that right over there. And if you can, join the live stream tomorrow at Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific. I'd love to see you guys there. We always have really great discussions, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.